Today, Freedom Central is speaking with Chris Jarvis with regards to a subject matter that we have been approaching for some time now. Freedom Central has actively been exploring the potential of various parties within the truth movement being controlled opposition, and last week we hosted Nigel Beckwith on our radio show, and he discussed a lot of information and evidence that we have also been uncovering with regards to do with the UK column. I then listened to Chris Jarvis's video or radio podcast, I should say, with Nigel Beckwith, and it's inspired me to have him come talk to us and tell us a little bit more about what he knows on the subject. So thanks for joining us, Chris, and please give us a little bit of an introduction into how you came into the truth movement and sort of your background with all of this.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on the show. Really, I suppose the best way is if I give a brief sort of CV of my life, really,
Sure.
in a nutshell, to bring us up to current events. So I've just made a couple of notes here just to help myself, because I can end up digressing.
Thanks.
But basically, I was born in 1976, normal child with a sister and everything, brought up in Leeds. Went to school as everyone else did, apparently had a normal life, and went to college, went to gain some IT qualifications, left school and went to work in the IT industry, and that's been the bulk of my sort of work life. During that time I got married, got divorced, had children, I've even sat on a jury. Basically, what's happened in recent years is through the marriage and divorce, because of the children, social services have come to be involved with my family, and through the ex-wife, basically in her home, and that all happened around about 2005, and what ended up happening was there was all sorts of abuse that came to light. And it ended up spiralling where social services kept visiting the home, and it appeared as if things were getting worse rather than better. So it came to the beginning of 2007, and my parents and I were called into social services office in Leeds. We were all living in Bridlington at the time, which is on the east coast of the country. If people know, it's a little seaside town, lovely little place. And we were told that there was something quite serious that had happened. Obviously, we already knew the social work involvement, so we were really, our hearts were sinking, as you can probably imagine. And we were told it's the worst thing that you could hear. We were told that sexual abuse had come to light. What actually ended up happening then were a series of failures that just spiralled and spiralled. And the alleged abuser was left in the home. I can only say that the alleged abuser at the moment until we have a proper trial, because there's never been a proper trial. And I actually ended up bringing a civil case to Leeds Court in August-September of 2007, to get my children out of there and into a place of safety with myself and my parents. What actually transpired is I came to realise just how ill-informed I was of the system, because we're all sort of brought up to believe in a wonderful system that's there to help. And all I'd seen by that point was constant failures on the part of social services, where they'd failed to protect, and the situation had got worse. And so then, having brought this to court in Leeds, I was then starting to see the same things there, where quite literally anything could be said in court, and as long as it suited the position of Leeds City Council, who go in there as what's called the local authority, then you could get what you want, and basically this went on for years, to a point in the last part of the trial part, and there were two groups of perpetrators for the abuse. One group titled the acute group, and one group titled the chronic group. The acute group of possible perpetrators I was never in, and all the evidence points towards, and I can freely say this on this interview, as I've pointed this out in court, and it's basically there's a thing called necessity in law, which means that sometimes you can bend the rules of law if the overriding objective is for justice. And the example of that is where police actually end up speeding in order to catch a motor vehicle thief or something like that. Technically they're breaking the law, but there's an overriding necessity, and you could say that in this case, which is what allows me to speak about it. And what ended up happening is my ex-wife made a deal with the local authority because she had 3 young children. We had 3 children together, and she'd since had 3 children to this new relationship. And basically she made a deal to protect her family, and pointed the finger at me. It suited everyone, and findings were made against me, against all the evidence, and against me being in any pool of perpetrators that evidence pointed towards, because the second pool of perpetrators was just anybody who'd had contact with the children, basically, and that could have included all the neighbours and everything. And this set me off on a journey to find out, has this only ever happened to me? Why are my children in the system? Why are they in care homes, kept separately from each other? I couldn't fathom this out. I couldn't fathom how something like this could happen. So then I started looking on the internet, and I started to see these videos of, first of all, there was John Harris teaching people about the legal fiction and what a police officer is and a police constable. Brilliant videos. And then I also found Brian Gerrish's videos of child stealing by the state. And because of my involvement in this personally, I then started to look at this quite intensely, you might say, to the point where every single time he made a video, I was watching it just to see if there was any little bit of new information he was putting out and such like, and I was following everything. During this as well, there was a class action that came along by a company called Freedom Advocacy and Law, run by 3 men as business partners called James Moore, Sam Hallimond and Paul Randall Jolliffe. And the UK column appeared to be pushing this at the time, as did mainstream media, and it looked too good to be true. And in the general sense of things, as things turn out, yes, it was too good to be true. It was a fake class action. I joined on that. They were looking to take the UK family courts to the international criminal courts in The Hague for all the injustice that's going on. And I thought, I joined it, sent them the details. They said, well, it qualified. And I said, well, what can I do? Because I was learning law and I wanted to try and help. So, I then started to move into court to help other people. And I actually went into court to argue the jurisdiction of the class action in Bradford courts, Bradford County Court, and it was before District Judge Dodd. And he was, he could have only have been in the knowledge that this was fake, because he was willing to give me everything, which was very unusual after what I'd experienced. And he's willing to put a stop, a halt, technically called an estoppel in law, on all the UK family proceedings, given the filing of the action against the UK family courts. And until the outcome of that action, then all the other actions had to be stopped for the sake of it being in a higher jurisdiction, and that was basically the crux of the argument. And he said, I just need one thing from you, Mr. Jarvis. And suggest, Your Honour. What's that? And he said, the serial number of the case. And I said, not a problem, Your Honour. I shall make inquiries. So I left that setting to go make my inquiries. Got in contact with these chaps to find out that nothing had actually been filed before any court. But yet here we had all the media pushing it, and it appeared to be supported, by a number of entities at the time. One of them being, Brian Gerrish and the UK column. And you sort of think, well, you can allow mistakes, so then you move on. And because everybody, I'm one of them, and I've heard you say the same before. I'm prepared to make mistakes in order of pursuit of what's right and the truth and doing what's right, and sometimes to my own detriment. And one of the things about some of the things I'm saying as we go along, I would very much like to be proved wrong on, and I would very much like to look like an idiot, because at the end of the day, me not being an idiot means that there are lots of people that are being led up the garden path, which is not right and is dishonourable. Yes. So then we basically, when I exposed the fake class action, I took a load of flack. I was called a liar and a druggie and bad parent and all these sorts of things. And my judgment was published. Now, anybody that reads it will know it's a load of rubbish anyway. And it's basically stitches everyone up in there. And there have been other edited judgments released by the court since, which is really interesting. I have since cleared my name, and I've done that on public law record, and as such, if anybody did do that now, they basically would be facing committal to prison proceedings, really, and it would be a crime in itself. Let me just check my notes again.
Take your time, no worries. We edit this, so it's fine.
Oh, right, no problem. So then one of the things that I actually have always done in my life is I've always worked, and I've always had an active mind, and I really started to get interested in law, and I've learned lots and lots of things. And during this time, around about 2008, I actually took a job as a senior trace investigator, which meant that I actually had to find missing people, and a lot of it was work for debts, but there was the odd good cause, you might say, and that was quite an interesting job, and it taught me a lot of skills. And one of the things it did is it tuned, in some ways, my analytical way of thinking. And what I've seen, basically, is some interesting things recently, because one of the organisations that I came to be involved in through this was the British Constitution Group, and that was through seeing Brian Gerrish's talks, and I was seeing that there was people coming together, they were sharing information, and there were good things going on. So I actually, which is unusual for me because I'm a bit of a hermit, really. Having spent so much time in court, you tend to want to spend as much time at home. I actually went to one of their British Constitution Group meetings in Newcastle, and Robert Greene was there, and he was doing a talk on Holly Gregg, and this was in January 2010, as I recall, and it was quite a cold time, with snow on the ground and everything, and it was very, very interesting. And from that point on, I said to myself, I'm going to commit to these guys. I'm going to get involved with these guys and try and see what I can do. And from there, I used to exchange emails and try and also distribute the UK column. I had an address that I was having, bundles of a couple of hundred at a time, which I did a few times. And I was handing those out. Unlike a lot of people that were taking money for it, I didn't. I was just wanted to get the message out there because I wanted to see how many people were in this same position, because I still was trying to find answers, and I always have been trying to find answers as to, when these things happen to you in the family courts, you tend to get quite compartmentalised, and you get bullied and told that you're not allowed to talk about these things with anybody, and if you do, that you can go to prison and all this sort of thing. And for a lot of people, as I've realised going on, it really does compartmentalise them to the point where they think they're the only people in that position. And one of the hopes that I have of this broadcast is that people realise that they are not on their own, and they have been targeted for a reason. And not only that, there are psychological operations in place to absorb the fallback from that, the people rebelling from that, and the government's not stupid, but yet we're made out all the time to think that they're stupid. There are some very, very intelligent people in government and very, very clever people, and one of the things that I'm finding is that I can only believe that there is some sort of government control going on here in terms of a controlled opposition. And the reason I say that is particularly I last year got involved with trying to get a gentleman out of prison. He was an 86-year-old World War II veteran. He was 85 at the time when he went in, and he was sent to prison for recording in court. And now, there wasn't any evidence that he'd recorded. He was only caught with a recording device. He wasn't given a trial. He was sent to prison for 6 months that day. He wasn't allowed to go and collect his belongings he wasn't given any rights or any jury or anything like that. There were so many wrong things about it, and if he had recorded, well, technically, a pen and paper is a recording device, so I remind any honourable judges when listening to this broadcast that they should treat everyone equally, and you can't allow reporters in to court with pens and paper if you're not going to allow tape recorders. But at the same time, there was no evidence that he had recorded anyway, and there still isn't. And I got involved with what's called a habeas corpus procedure, and one of the MPs in Birmingham, Yardley, a gentleman called John Hemming, MP, actually contacted me at the time to assist me and point me in the right direction, really, on the legal route, and he was very, very helpful, for which I'm very, very grateful for. Basically, what happened is I then did the paperwork. I was actually with a few other people. There was a team of people. At the time, there was a whole load of publicity going on the internet. There were people collecting petition signatures. There was we had a protest outside the Leeds prison where television came and recorded it. Russia Today did a piece on it. But UK column didn't seem to be, there seemed to be not that quick on the uptake, which Norman Scaff has pointed out himself. And what actually happened was this habeas corpus procedure, traditionally, what it is it's to bring the prisoner into court to say whether they are incarcerated lawfully or not, and it is to bring them in with their captor. And their captor, in this case, is the prison, basically the prison, the head of the prison. And what we did is we had this procedure via video link from Leeds Prison to the Royal Courts of Justice in London before Mr Justice Wynne Williams on the Queen's Bench. And what I subsequently learned from this, because I was learning all the way through it, as was everyone else, what I subsequently learned was that this actually, as much as this procedure went wrong, it was released the following week on appeal, partly on the submissions that I'd made, and that was before the president of the criminal division of the High Court. And now you see, no layperson has been and done this, literally gone in there and stood up and said, "My lord, I've prepared a skeleton argument," you know, and he's gone and taken it and read it, and you know, but yet the UK column doesn't print that about someone standing up for another man, you know, and I'm just very flummoxed about this, because this is exactly what the British Constitution Group's supposed to stand up for, is rights, and part of the argument of this man being locked up without a trial and such was the Magna Carta, you know, which is supposed to guarantee every man's rights. Now, law evolves over time, and there are parts of the Magna Carta that the British say shouldn't have been written out, and should still stand, that they stand up for. And one of them is lawful rebellion. And lawful rebellion means saying no to the government. It means going against the government. And, you know, it's made me look deeper at this, as I've seen that there's been a sort of lack of support, you might say, from the very people who are supposed to be standing up for these things and reporting on them. If I just go into the specific, one of the extremely positive things that came from this procedure, as much as it failed in the first instance, the habeas corpus procedure actually got written into United Kingdom case law, because it was before the Queen's Bench, which is one of the highest levels of court in the country. And what that did is it said and wrote into law, because each time a case law comes along, it readjusts the interpretation of law, and that's all law is all the time, is it's continuing, evolving interpretation on ruling upon ruling of at the highest state translated down. And it basically wrote back into law that any man can represent any man, and not only that, it is what's called real freeman law, because it meant that Norman Scarth did not have to stand and represent his birth certificate, Mr. Norman Scarth. Because I was prepared to represent my birth certificate and say that you have this body, this man, kept there unlawfully, then it meant that he could stay as the man. Now, that's a really complicated legal argument, and for those that know, who are listening, they will understand and comprehend what I am saying there. And it is something to shout from the rooftops about, because for years, people have been having this argument about whether the birth certificate is the legal fiction or not, whether we are the Mr. or the Miss, or, you know, it's basically, it proves in law that it is a legal fiction, and it also proves in law that one man can stand up for any man and has those rights, and doesn't have to apply for those rights either. Because one of the things that we were able to do during that process was get legal privilege of visits to Norman Scarth within Leeds Prison as legal representatives. The judge granted us those rights, you know, and we were allowed to take, I even faxed the Ministry of Justice to ask permission to take a tape recorder in, and they granted permission to take a tape recorder in to see a prisoner. Now, most solicitors wouldn't even get that far. And I'll tell you what, it's when I look at the way that things have gone on, we, myself and the team of people there, were actually showing that the law was working. It was showing that you could actually use some rights, maybe, you know, not all of them work, but you could get some rights and some freedoms. And to me, that doesn't quite fit with the picture of this bleak picture that the UK column does appear to be printing and publishing and speaking about of broken Britain. I mean, they seem to be have some sort of weird agenda. And I can say this because it's not just this one incident. Weird as it sounds, because of this, and because of the lack of publicity, I've had to push this myself. And to a lot of people on the internet, it seemed like I'm being egotistical, but I'm not. It's everybody's rights, and I would much rather somebody else push it. And because nobody has, I've had to. And one of the things about it is the issue came up again just very recently because Roger Hayes was apparently sent to prison unlawfully. Now, because it hadn't been given the publicity and that it was due, people weren't educated on it, which means that a year later, I'm still the only man in the country that has the knowledge, that is willing to do it and can do it, to get this paperwork in and at least get a hearing into court, to get the prisoner on screen and a hearing and something on record about what's going on. So, I see that they're talking about, on the UK column, that Roger A is being sent to prison unlawfully, and it's through this habeas corpus procedure they're going to get him out. So I contacted Brian Gerrish because I'm thinking, this is surely this is a joke. So I thought, well, I'll contact them in way of assisting them, and I offered my support as a consultant, basically, to say that I'd successfully carried out this procedure, and basically to make it easy for them. Say, you know, give me your paperwork, I'll check it, you know, whatever, I'll point you in the right direction, whatever you need, but you know, I'm not doing it, you know, I'm there as a consultant. And the reason being is because there have been some things that have happened to me recently where I've been threatened by the judiciary out of court, and it's clear to me that it is it's probably better if I stay away from helping people at the moment. They've made that very clear, which I may go into later. So it came to the day before Danny Bampin says he's going to go into court for Roger Hayes. I've got him on Skype on a group call with John Hurst, Guy Taylor, and as I say, Danny Bampin. And I'm there as a consultant. It's 9 o'clock at night, and I say, right lads, how are we getting on? What's the plan? Have you done your paperwork? Oh, we've got a statement off Roger, they say. I said, yeah, but what have you filled in forms? And what forms? This is 9 o'clock at night before they're going into court. What forms? And it's like, hang on a minute, this is not right. Now, one of the things about when we did the habeas corpus procedure last year with Norman Scarth, there were a number of things that we established, and there's only a small sort of crowd of free men, you might say, on the internet that sort of are at a level of exchanging information between themselves. So there's only so much information going about this stuff. So, you know, I'm thinking this is all very strange, because what they were wanting to do was replicate the failures of the previous year, because the previous year we've been to both Leeds and Manchester courts, which are supposed to act as regional high courts with authority to do habeas corpus procedures, because what you have is, from the High Court in London, you have a regional judge that basically travels around all the different courts, sitting as a Queen's Bench judge, which means that whichever court he sits at becomes the Queen's Bench, technically. And we already established last year that didn't work. You know, I mean, I literally had on one occasion at Leeds, the counter staff opened the glass window after reading the paperwork, threw the paperwork at me, slammed the window door and ran off. because they were so scared. And I remember telling John Hemming, the MP, about it at the time, and he said, "Oh, you must write about all this. This will make interesting reading later on." And now this is the thing, is I've tried to pass on all this information. Now, to hear that these people were going to go back to Manchester in Roger's case, I just, which is what they were saying as well. It was just, I was in disbelief. So I said, right, I'll talk you through the paperwork. I'll talk you through how to do it. And Danny was, you know what? I've been busy all day, and I'm trying to do this and do that, and I'm really, really tired. Can't you do it? Because I've got my appearance at court in the morning. Because that's literally all he was bothered about, was his appearance. Because the reason I say this, and I don't mean anything by this to Danny, if he's listening or anything, but I feel there are a number of actors at work who are playing roles, who would just like scripts to be given, who don't want to do the right thing. They're just seeking fame or whatever it is. They've got their own reasons, but it's not the reasons why I was helping. You see, what I saw was an opportunity here to basically make council tax voluntary. And you see, having gone before the High Court and having helped other people, I knew what there was to be achieved, and I explained it to these people. And me doing the paperwork meant that Danny had no comprehension or understanding of what he had. He just literally had a script. So therefore, when the judge is there arguing point by point what is written, he cannot rebut that because he has no comprehension of what he's doing. It's because he's reading a script, you know. And literally, they gave away the, as I say, the right for council tax to be made voluntary. And how that is, I'll explain it to the listeners should anybody within the United Kingdom wish to put their self forward to have a go at this, and it's not for the faint-hearted. And that is, you see, I will say as well, I'm in a position where I'm actually unable to work, and therefore I'm in a benefits position, so therefore I'm not in that position where I can put myself forward for the council tax issue. I will say that if anybody's thinking, well, why don't he do it himself? But basically under Protocol 4 of the European Convention of Human Rights, Article 1, which all the countries of Europe are all signed up to, it makes it illegal to send anybody to prison for a debt, right? Now, that means that any order from an administrative court, a non-criminal court, is a debt. It's a contract made, and it's a debt that you owe to the court because your name, whatever it is, and that debt could be prison itself. So therefore, you can't be sent to prison for anything unless it's by a criminal trial and by jury. And that's what this is establishing in law. And for that opportunity to not be taken and not used correctly, I was then asking some serious questions.
Now, this is, sorry, Chris, just to bring this back, this is obviously coming back to Roger Hayes as well, why he went to jail for apparently not paying council tax.
Yes, yeah. So, you know, so Danny took this to get Roger out before Manchester, and I said to him, you know, we've done all this before last year, mate, and it didn't work. You know, the only real high court is in London, because I explained to him, apart from anything else, with all the other senior judges around in the High Court, you know, it would put added pressure on whichever judge sits the case, because he won't want to look a fool to his colleagues, you know, especially when there's a full public gallery there, and possibly TV cameras and things like that, which is it's easier to get the media's attention when things are at the High Court as well, you know, because it's serious, you know. And it just didn't listen to me. And I thought, well, you know, ego over experience is coming out here, and what it's really doing is it's causing a massive problem. And I didn't and when I've looked at this, I've seen that it's a repeated pattern. And what actually happened there as well is because Danny didn't get the hearing he expected at Manchester, because he didn't even get the prisoner on video screen. He was just railroaded, which it would have been guaranteed had he taken it to London, as I explained. So they would have at least had a hearing on record, and Roger would have had his say in court. And they denied him of that. And at the time, Roger was supposed to be on hunger strike as well. So I'm there thinking, how can you be doing this to this man, that's on hunger strike? And I'm thinking, am I being played here? Am I being played? Do they really want to keep him in? Are they wanting to make this system look corrupt and wrong? Because that's the way it looks to me. And that's the conclusion that I'm starting to draw. I produced this, incidentally, if you went to a solicitor to get the habeas corpus written up and everything, it would cost probably upwards of £20,000. And that's one of the other limiting factors in these issues, you see. It's not something you'd get legal aid for as can be got here in the UK when you're on a low income. I've basically done more research, and I've researched a second procedure, and I had a backup procedure ready to go. And they railroaded me on that as well. And I passed the information across and wrote all the documents. And I sat and wrote the documents and passed the bounced our heads together between myself and Yvonne Stewart-Taylor at the time via Skype, because she has some legal knowledge helping people as Mackenzie friends, as it would happen. And it was this document of a writ of certoria, which is basically a form of judicial review. Because the habeas corpus had been used and it had failed, you can't really use a procedure twice, because it's an exhausted remedy, it's called. So then you have to move to the next procedure that's there, in which case it's some form of judicial review. And this form of judicial review that hasn't been used for years and years, like the habeas corpus, and I'd done the research, I'd established with the courts that it was there, I had a certificate from the royal courts to say that it was real, and I got railroaded, and Brian turned around to me, Brian Gerrish phoned me up, and he says, he was putting me in charge of this next stage of the operation, being that Danny was going to Plymouth, not going to Plymouth, going to that Forvic Island for 5 weeks. Lives in Plymouth by all accounts. And so I did this paperwork, I sent it through to John Hurst, and the next thing I see is Brian Gerrish is on the radio, telling people, giving people updates about the Roger Hayes case, and I've not been reported to. It's like I've been cut out of the loop. So I sent a message to Brian saying, I feel like I've been undermined. And he sent me one back saying, by who, Chris? And I'm thinking, well, I can hardly say you, can I, Brian? Because if you're listening, Brian, that's exactly who undermined me, is you, and you know it. And I'm not quite sure what the actual agenda is, whether it's to divert our attention off something else, or just to another level of control. But whatever is going on, it is not in the interests of the British people. I can say that, and I'm happy to stand corrected as well. I'm happy to be wrong, but I feel that I'm not wrong, because there are so many other things that you start looking at, and you start digging deeper when you're looking at these things. And for the British Constitution Group to be a lawful rebel group and stand up for lawful rebellion, truly in law, if they truly believe it, then what they would do is they would stand separately from the government in any way, shape or form possible, and say that we do not accept your governance we will establish our alternative governance, which is what they're purporting to do. And it all sounds very grand. But as I've come to learn things in law, one of the things I've come to realise is the registration of things. And when you register something, especially if it's to the government, what happens is that something becomes the property of the government. They take the title, you just keep the property for the government. And this is exhibited by vehicle registration. You know, in the UK, when you register a vehicle to you know, the driving licence or DVLA and all that, to do things right and pay all your tax and everything, what you actually get back is registered keepers documents. And listeners, you can go check this if you're in the UK and drive a car and you're thinking, you know, how can I prove this? Well, you can prove it by going and getting your keepers documents. And in no part does it say that you are the owner, because you're not. And this is what gives the government the authority to crush your car if you don't pay your tax. It's because you don't own the car, it's because they do. This is why you are under the obligation to pay the tax, because you're using that vehicle and they're taxing you for it. You know, it's their vehicle. It's perfectly lawful. You know, sometimes we cry foul at these things, but when you actually start to understand what's going on, you start to realise that actually, yeah, we might have been conned, but what they're actually doing is perfectly lawful. Really, it meets with natural law, it meets with justice, you know, really, when you look at it, truly. And so that's when you start to look at ways out. So, the same goes for companies. Because, you know, when you've got a system, simple system of governance, you know, you're not going to apply different rules around. You know, it's like one rule for all. And this is the same for companies. And what happens is, when you register your company, you have to pay tax. And if you don't pay your tax, it goes through insolvency. You know, and you get registered bankrupt and things like that. Now, when I say that the British Constitution Group is a registered company, that really gives me serious questions. And for every single listener, you can go check this out on Google or Yahoo, whatever your favourite search engine is. You know, you can get up directors' reports, company reports, and there is one called Brit Constitution Limited. Almost as if they're trying to hide it somehow by just varying the name slightly. Now, that doesn't change who that company actually is, because that company is the British Constitution Group. And this is evidenced by the fact that this company has given annual returns for the past 3 years, which means by those annual returns, what they've done is they've submitted tax reports to the government, putting themselves below the government and saying, we accept your authority, government. And not only do we accept your authority, we're just keeping this organisation for you, and we're gaining you more taxes, Mr. Government.
Now, Chris, could you just for a minute explain to me exactly what is the British Constitution Group as a business, or the Brit Constitution Limited business? What do they actually do that they are able to pay taxes and claim taxes? Are they making money? How? You know, let's look at the money line here.
Yeah, well, basically what happens is they charge a membership fee, and that membership fee could be anywhere from £1 per month through to £25 a month through to £100 a year. They have varying levels. This is on their website, free for everyone to check. So therefore there is a flow of money created.
What are the services they actually offering in return for that?
Well, their company is registered as an education company, as an adult education company, particularly other education. And to me, this just fits in with what they're doing, because they are going around talking about things and printing things, which could be deemed as education. Now, the thing is, that means that they are under a certain level of obligation to the government by registering this company. And one of the things that's always happened in the past, when people have ever questioned Brian Gerrish, for instance, about his involvement with the British Constitution Group, he always says, it's Rogers, it's nothing to do with me, it's Roger Hayes, blah, blah, blah. Now, I believe that Roger could well be an innocent party in all this, and a bit of a set-up as a patsy, you might say. Because I've met Roger Hayes on a number of occasions, and there's just something very genuine and nice about him, and you know, I'd like to believe that he's an innocent caught up, because there are...
Do you think they're using him and as a bit of a tool, an instrument?
Yeah, because when I... just to sort of make my point about this, is Brian Gerrish is actually a partner in British Constitution Group. Okay. And which means he's a director. And as a partner, it means he owns it, or keeps it, should I say. Sorry, he doesn't own it, the government owns it. He keeps it for the government. Yeah. And he has the obligation of submitting the tax returns, etc., to the government. Which means that every time somebody pays thinking they're in lawful rebellion, they're declaring they're in lawful rebellion, joining this organisation, and these people might want to stay anonymous and might think that they are free men and free women and on that path. But really, when they make that payment, what they are giving is something called joinder in law, because their legal fiction, their birth certificate, their bank account name, their real name, their legal title, is joined to the donation when they make the payment via tax records that can be inspected by Her Majesty's government. You know, it's fact. It's how it works. And looking at that, it can, you know, I can only think, when I've looked at the fact that lawful rebellion is not in law, and the fact that Roger Hayes going to prison recently, it obviously didn't work for him, and the fact that this company is registered to the government, you know, I can only see that Roger's been set up for a bit of a fall, because the man's been made bankrupt. The man's suffered a bit of injustice himself. He's been made bankrupt indefinitely, because I've seen the register, you know, which means they will let him go when they want, you know, it could well be that through his political involvements of past that he annoyed someone, and they're using their persuasions to keep the man down, and then he's being used and absorbed by this sponge for the resistance, as I see it, because all I see, what's going on is pointing the finger in the other direction all the time from the UK column. And for instance, they don't appear to be addressing the real issues at hand, and when they're approached about facts like this, and for instance, I'm aware of the Holly Gregg Hoax Group also approaching them about the facts that they've researched on that case. You know, what ends up happening is a pattern of behaviour occurs where Brian starts calling people liars. That's Brian Gerrish. He starts calling people liars and starts saying people have personality problems, that they're mental, they're unstable, they're loose cannons. And I find this very interesting because it's not just myself and the Holly Gregg Hoax Group that this has happened to. I've seen it happen with other people as well. There's other people that have written to me, more than one, and you know, it's for them to speak up, and hopefully they will now, once they're here, that they're not on their own. And I have no doubt that Brian Gerrish is a very decent and honourable man, and he's helped a lot of people. I have absolutely no doubt about that, because I wouldn't have stuck with him for so long. But what I am in doubts about, and what I do see, is that I feel there is a control going on And maybe, who knows, maybe deep down he thinks that he can use this platform as best he can to do what good he can, and you know, better him than someone else being controlled. Who knows? There could be a million reasons, but one thing is for sure is that the UK column is not standing up for people's rights as purported. It's Brian Gerrish promised to blow the whistle on child stealing. For instance, I sent you across some video evidence of and fake court order, and that was supposed to be reported on by the UK column. That all sorts of excuses were made, you know, about things as generally goes on. As I've heard from other people, like, oh, I've missed the deadline for this edition, we'll try and get in next edition. You know, and it's almost like sometimes the excuses they give are almost like when you give to children, when children are in a car and they're going, oh, we're nearly there yet, and miles away, and you have to say, well, yeah, we're nearly there. And Brian, for some reason, puts himself in that position, and I've never quite figured out what the actual agenda is. But you know what, there is definitely an agenda, and to the point where in the recent few days, I've had so much pressure put on me to not make this interview, to not do it with you, that, you know, from people who are friends who have Brian as a mutual friend, that are like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? He's done such good work and that and all this lot. And it's, you know what, people need to think about this and think clearly about the British Constitution Group issue and about all the things that have been overlooked. And you know what, there are such things as wolves in sheep's clothing, and you know, for your perfect propaganda agent has to give out 99% truth just so they can get out of the lie 1% of the time, or avoid whatever issue it is that 1% of the time. You know, they have to keep you distracted with you know, shiny keys, like a baby. Shiny keys, here's some shiny keys. You know, that's all that's going on a bigger scale. And, you know, one thing that I picked up on your previous discussion with Nigel Beckwith is he touched on there was a stage where the UK column were actually asking for stories writing and for local reporters. And, you know what? I didn't see anything coming of that, but what I did see is, because I was one of the ones submitting stories and writing to them, because at the time I was running a website called socialservicehell.org, which I'm looking at restarting back up, because through their common purpose they've actually tried to persuade me to shut this down, you know, which is very interesting, you know, amongst many other things. One of the other things that I've done as well just recently, because there's so many things, it's very hard to sort of go over everything in detail, but in my pursuit of justice in my own case and helping other people is, in the past few months I've made the motion and actually been to court to obtain summonses against Leeds City Council, who are the local governing body in this area, sometimes termed as local authority or local government, and it's for the fraud that they've committed and the injustice, and it's really seeking the right things to happen in justice, you know, for my children to be set free from their unlawful incarceration, and for the perpetrator of the crimes against my children to be brought to justice, you know, basically. And again, it's a massive thing for a citizen to take a local governing body to court, and I was producing evidence for it, and it was something else that the UK column didn't appear to be covering. But what I was told is that they were keeping a close eye on me, and I found that very interesting, that term. They're keeping a close eye on me. Well, that is very interesting, considering my track record, my proven track record of having gone to the High Court and, you know, got a man out of prison, changed the law. You know, it's like these are not little things. And why would somebody not want to report on that? I don't get it. I do not get it. Why would you want to put the same story up all the time of Holly Gregg, continue publishing this Holly Gregg? You know, and when I've looked at the Holly Gregg and comparing it to the things that have gone on with my own children, one of the things that strikes me, particularly in the Holly Gregg case, is the fact that they said that the Criminal Injuries Board have paid out compensation to Holly. Well, believe it or not, the same application was made in my case against my children, and what that made me do is it actually made me look at the Criminal Injuries Board and what qualifies someone to get compensation, because it was also one of the contributing factors to fraud, because I believe that the local council is obtaining this money to use for themselves, and it's not going to reach my daughter. You know, that's part of my argument. All you have to prove is via medical records that you have had some injury. It doesn't have to have gone to court. You don't have to have found anyone guilty. It doesn't prove anything. The only thing you need to prove is that you've had something that would fit a criminal injury, you know, in whatever form, and it's very, very vague. And it's almost too good to be true. And it just makes me wonder if you look at the picture of, say, for instance, a local authority that might have children in care, and look at how many children they put into care, and it could be 200 that month. If you made a claim for 200 of those children, at the very least, you could live off some good interest. And this is what's part of what's going on. And what I see with the Holly Gregg case is they're muddying the waters, and they're stopping people from seeing what's going on by saying, by giving misinformation and saying, look, see, she's had a criminal injury, that proves it all. She's had £12,000, or whatever it is, whatever figure. Yeah. Doesn't prove diddly squat, doesn't prove anything. You know, but at the same time, I fully believe that Holly Gregg has been abused. I totally believe she's been abused. But I don't believe it's the story that's being told. You know, I think, you know, there's different forms of abuse as well, and the abuse continues to go on. Because these people, you know, for whatever good they believe they're doing, they are parading a Down syndrome young lady who, in law, is a child, which means it's child abuse, because they're parading her around, they're making her relive all this day in, day out. I mean, you know, it just seems to me that there's it's not in the interests of Holly what's going on, because of my knowledge as well, one of the things that I've offered is to actually give forward the information for private prosecutions, and you know, you'd think people would jump at the chance.
Is this to Holly, of course?
Yeah, and do you know something? To lay forward information at a magistrate's court, if somebody commits a crime, to get summons issued, to get somebody arrested, or get a warrant out on them, whatever you want to call it, it's free. Doesn't cost anything. The Holly Demands Justice Group appear to be collecting money for a private prosecution. Now, that's something that I just simply do not get. I don't get it. You know, anybody can do it. And I've said, and I publicly say now, that Robert Green, if you are a man of honour, you will get the evidence that you believe you have, you will go to court, or you will go to a magistrate's court and book time with them and lay forward under the Magistrates Court Act 1980, Section 1, you will lay forward the information. You don't give it to the court staff, no matter what they say, you give it to the judge. You know, because I say that clearly because I don't want any excuses to be given. Oh, well, we gave it to the court staff and the railroaders. No, sorry, you give it to the judge, no matter what the court staff say, because that's who makes the decision. And you see, the court system has all sorts of firewalls put in place to stop time wasters, and they generally use those and stretch those excuses and powers to stop justice. That's the clearest way I can put it. You know, and as such, it is every man's right or every woman's right to lay whatever information they've got to the judge, and the judge alone. And what they do is they then ask the basis of the allegations. You don't have to prove anything at that stage. So the whole point is, if you believe it, Robert, you could go do this. You don't even have to take your evidence at this stage. You just need to believe it. And you go there and you swear an oath, and the judge will basically say, you know, whether he'll issue it or not, because you swear in the oath on the penalty of perjury. And what that means is, if you lie, you could be sent to prison. So I challenge that to Robert Greene, if he's a man of honour, to go do that. I would like to see some justice for Holly Gregg. And I think that's what everybody would like. And it's one of the things that by you not doing this, Mr. Greene, you are dividing the truth movement. And I cannot believe that you would want that. I cannot believe that anybody would want that. You know, the only people that I can believe that would want that are the government. Now, I'm sure Mr. Green's not the government, are you, Mr. Greene?
Well, so I must say that, you know, obviously we went up to Edinburgh to interview Robert Greene in November 2010, and I've always felt, for whatever reason, that Robert Greene was just so sincerely genuine, and he's been severely misled, and perhaps he's just in a position now where he actually, I don't know, he's just being used. I don't know what it is. I can't work it out what it is with him. He appears to be a very intelligent man with his heart in the right place, and I felt it with him, you know, I really did. I just don't get why or what is going on unless he genuinely is playing to an agenda.
One of the things that had been suggested to me by, I'll just say, a member of Brian's inner circle, Brian Gerrish's inner circle, is that Brian Gerrish had been got at via neuro-linguistic programming. And when I look at the investigations he's made, this is one of the things that does make me wonder about all this, is has he started off with all this genuinely, all his talks, exposing everything, and he's dug so deep, he's been got at and co-opted, you know, put under programming, and well, now it's our way or the highway, you know.
Yeah. Well, this is very common. We see it happening to people all the time. And I use someone like Charlie Beach as the best example. You know, whether he was always just an ego, or whether I truly believe at one point they got to him, because we knew him before that, and he was nowhere near as bad as he was towards the end. Yeah, that's very much how Brian Gerrish is acting at the moment. He's acting very out of character. Yeah. And very unstable. And one of the reasons I say this is because I say to all the listeners, I do not mean Brian Gerrish any harm. In fact, I feel quite sad for Brian, because I feel he's somehow got himself in this position, and I feel that there's a good man inside that doesn't want the truth movement to be split and doesn't want the control, but somehow or other he's got himself there, you know, and he's the man who's basically personifying what's going on at the moment. And you know, when his answers are to people that, well, you've got a personality issue, when really there's clear issues at stake, that you know, where's the evidence for the Holly Gregg business? Why isn't anything moving forward? Why have so many people sent files to you, Brian, and it's not gone on? Have you taken on too much, Brian, I wonder? And it's caused your head to go, and someone's taken advantage of that, programmed you. Who knows? There could be a million reasons. I would just like to say on the Brian Gerrish thing is that every source that has come forward, yourself, Nigel, some of the other people that have come forward, He is, between him and Carol Bragg, they've written to me discrediting everybody, not actually dealing with the questions, rather trying to discredit the witnesses by saying they got, as you say, personality issues, druggy, or, you know, abusive, family issues, whatever. It's always about the other people are at fault, never them.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the things that I see in this is that's particularly what, if you read up on the New World Order and what they will say when people discover what the control is, they will call people crazy. That's the playbook. And this is exactly what's going on a smaller scale, you might say. I mean, you know, what we're actually looking at is in terms of law, with governance, what it means is that you are allowing the government to be your parent in law. They are ultimately above you, and you are a child. And that's how, you know, if you allow that, which we've all done inadvertently, and there's many of us that are finding ways out of that, you know, you're placing yourself as a child. So for these people to come along pushing alternative governance, knowing that you know, this places you as a child in law, knowing that there are so many free men and free women involved in the movement, wanting to be self-governing, which is sometimes termed as anarchy, and in anarchy, I wouldn't want people to get the wrong impression, because it's another thing that we've had so much propaganda about over the years through various different media streams across the world is we're told that anarchy leads to chaos, you know, and but no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It just means that you're responsible for yourself, you know. And if people were responsible for themselves and actually truly responsible for themselves, and not worrying about, you know, everyone else in the world and all this and how we're going to stop this, how we're going to stop that. If they actually took responsibility for feeding themselves, clothing themselves, you know, growing their own food, you know, making things, repairing things, you know, going back to old ways, that's what the government's so afraid of. Yeah. That's why they're wanting alternative governance in, because they realise that what we're currently living in is just alien, really, to us. When you look at civilisations over the years, it's really only in the past 100 years that we've all come to live in these boxes that we call houses and things. You know, yeah. It's yeah. You know, I'm sure somebody must have had a bet on at one point. I bet we can get everyone to live in boxes.
Now, just going quickly back to Brian Gerrish, Chris, talking about obviously money and stuff. The funding is a big issue, and it's where I came into this initially was, for me, as an investigative journalist, one of the things I always go straight for is let's find out where the funding of something is involved, because that's normally where you find the root. And of course, we dug up we threw a few seeds out there, and some people came forward with some pretty interesting information. Of course, one of them is that Sheila Butler, who is in fact the niece of Lord Kitchener, she is the daughter of an earl, an 83-year-old widow, I beg your pardon. She is now funding the UK column, but she also funds the British National Party and is extremely racist and xenophobic.
Well, this is very, very interesting, because this leads on to something else in a moment, but just focusing on the money issue. One of the things that Brian has been extremely elusive about over the years is where the funding has been coming from. So all I'll say is congratulations for getting somewhere on that, and that clearly highlights exactly why they wouldn't say, because to be honest with you, you know, it's clearly not funded on donations, and as I've heard that you've assessed before, setting up the media studio, and I mean, I've worked in nightclubs and things like that, and I've done a bit of DJing, so I've got some equipment. I know how much these things cost myself, and to set up with all the broadband costs and all that, and you know, it's astronomically expensive, you know, to be getting out live broadcasts on a daily basis. So there has to be another income stream and of a significant source, which is interesting given the current financial situation generally across the board, where people are struggling to feed themselves, you know. And here we've got a brand new studio being set up
Yeah,
you know, with the green screen and all the video thing going on in the background and all the world-class sound equipment. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well, this is of course the thing that we need to be looking at in terms of their funding. But I think what concerns me more than anything is that these people are taking money potentially from donors, potentially from people who subscribe to the newspapers, thinking that you know, Brian Gerrish and crew are potentially on our side doing a good thing, when there's many people coming forward to me saying that they are in fact just sitting on paperwork, they're not doing much with it, and in fact they're spending time focusing on things which are redundant whilst actually shelving things that could potentially be law changing.
Exactly, yeah. And this is the thing, because particularly I have been asked in the past to take my files down, and for whatever reason, I mean, I believe I'm on a sort of spiritual path. There's some other things going on in my life that I can't explain, but that didn't happen, and thankfully that didn't happen. You know, because one of the things about the files is it's a paper trail, and it is the absolute evidence that can bring down the fraud and corruption in this country. And when people hold on to files, what they're doing is they're stopping justice from taking place. And one of the particular concerns that I have as well is when people are on the up against it with the system, let's say, they're generally on the edge emotionally, the ground down and the lowest ebb. And I would like to remind Brian Gerrish and everyone at the UK column that they have a duty of care, and that when somebody is on the edge and you give them hope, and if it turns out to be false, they could end up taking their life, and you have that on your hands. I'll make that very clear now. And this is part of the reason for me as to why I have to, as a duty, give this interview with yourself, because it's about those people for me. It's not about Brian Gerrish. I love Brian Gerrish, as you know. I've not loved him as much in the past few days with some of the things he's saying, but I think he's done some brilliant work, and unfortunately he's got himself in a mess. Yeah. For whatever reason, he's got himself in a mess.
Well, just talking about money and stuff, I've sent off to Carol Bragg, confirmed in writing. Carol Bragg, financial manager of the UK column, confirmed in writing to me that Sheila Butler is in fact Lord Kitchener's niece, and she is in fact a funder. I've got it in writing in an email. But after that I said, well look, I'm still not satisfied. Thank you for coming back to me, and I was very nice in the email back, and I asked, could you please give us your annual running cost and a list of your funders, and if there's nothing to question, I promise I won't make it public. And of course she wouldn't do that, but I kept persisting on asking for the running costs and talking about what I think is really something that's a typical agent's CIA tactic, and I write about this in my second book, is Brian's now done a diversion. He's diverted the attention away from the question that I'm asking him by throwing in something really perverted, which is he's now started firing questions at me, demanding that I provide proof of my own abuse.
Yeah, I find that absolutely sick, especially when he is purporting to stand up for people who are abuse victims and survivors. I should use the word survivor, because a victim's only somebody that's given up. Really, I find that very sickening, especially with what he's done recently, trying to slur my own name, because this leads me on to the bully boy tactics that he is aware of, that the judiciary have used against me recently. Is I was helping a Ghanaian couple who have had their children stolen by Leeds City Council. Unfortunately I can't name the names, because I do believe that the judiciary, I think they would make an example out of me on this, but I am going to name them at a later stage, because I do not believe in all this secrecy. It was the third hearing in on a simple contact application so that these people could see their children. And what actually happened is I was called into chambers with the judge, and they basically said there was myself, the judge and the local authority barrister said, "We're extremely sorry, Mr. Jarvis, couldn't explain to you why we were here until now. But basically, there's a question over your mental health." And I'm like, what? and your capacity to be a Mackenzie friend on this case. And you see, what has actually happened is I've made so much progress in terms of these so-called professional barristers that go into court. They have gone to university and spent years and years and years training up for this moment to be in that position. I've come along, read a few books, and taken up that position, and they don't like it.
No,
it's very simple. But you see, this is the thing, and it's very critical as to why this needs to be publicised widely. Is because this is what's going to change things in the United Kingdom, at least. It's because the judiciary have different members of their club operating within the courtroom, or members of the Law Society. So you're in there with a gang of bullies, really, and no matter how nice they look, you're up against it. So, and this is why people get sold out. So, to actually go and support your friend and have your friend represent you is taking one of their operatives out of the room, and that's one less on their payroll, which is another victory. And it's also adds that level of scrutiny there. Particularly where people are not allowed in because it's not a public case, well, you can still have your friend represent you, even if it's a secret hearing, and that adds a level of scrutiny that they don't particularly like. And this is again why I've never understood why Brian Gerrish has never published this case law, because it would literally be like a punch on the nose to the system.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's some very, very strange things going on. Very strange things.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Absolutely strange things going on, Chris. To be honest with you, having done this, as I said, coming into this, now going into my fourth year of Freedom Central, I'd be naive to say that I hadn't noticed some very strange things amongst those people who I thought were supposed to be on the same side as me. And they're clearly working to a different agenda. And there's so many different examples I can give of this. And to be honest with you, it's funny, they all seem to stick together. All the people that I've previously mentioned in radio shows, there seems to be a bit of a click, and it's almost like they are working together.
That's right, I've observed the same things. One of the groups that I've gotten involved with in the recent year or two has been We Are Change in Leeds, Manchester and Liverpool. And in that, I got involved with all sorts of things. But it was quite interesting because one of the observations I made when we were going to court and trying to get people in support to go to court for each other and sit in the public gallery, there was a very heavy police presence, an unusually heavy police presence at the courts. And that rang alarm bells for me. And then I started to see control going on within that group. And I do not have evidence of this, but I'm willing to say that, that's part of the Brian's control. They report to Brian Gerrish in some form or other, via Gwen Vale, who's their leader. And it's just a very, very weird thing, because how I ended up leaving We Are Change was there was an issue came up where a film company had contacted them to do a documentary on 9/11 and what people's views are, 7/7 and all that sort of thing. And Sam Bamford, as he's known, is also known as Alex Bamford as well, which is, I've always had questions as to why somebody would need to give a false name and then change it, and how do we know which one's the real name now? He took it upon himself to, this email had come to him for some reason, which is very strange, because We Are Change is supposed to be a group of equal individuals, all peaceful, standing up for grassroots change. That's basically the description it says on the tin. And when you join it, you find out there's a hierarchy and there's people who are known as organisers. I was one of them, and they made me one of them because of it's sort of known to grassroots people what I've been doing, the things that I've been trying to do. There's people that know, so I for them added a bit of legitimacy, it would seem. Because, for instance, we had the Leeds group, and I still believe it's the same situation where there's organisers of the group, but none of the organisers are from Leeds. Well, hang on a minute, there's so many million people in Leeds, but yet none of them are from Leeds. It's like that already should be alarm bells to anybody who's listening to go and have a look. Because Gwen Vale certainly ain't from Leeds. She's from Bradford. So why isn't there a way I change Bradford? But anyway, that's all of a question. So then this email came about that got sent round the group that had been answered. And it was Sam answering it to the film company saying how disgusted he was at the hit piece they'd done on Charlie Beach. And it appeared to be defending Charlie Beach. And I thought, well, that's a bit weird. Bit weird. And he was making out like they were going to set him up or something. And I thought, well, what's he frightened of? So he'd also put on that all the other members of the group are all sovereign, blah, 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 and that they have the right to respond and take part in it if they wish. Well, I found that very interesting because for a leader of the group, I mean, he was Manchester group, but there was crossover between the groups, you see. And for him, as so-called leader of the group, to be answering this email without even having a meeting about it and saying, listen, guys, got you all together, what do you think about this film crew coming in? Which is what should have been done in my view, you know. But no, he took it upon himself. And this man's ex-army, and I took issue about him being ex-army as well, because I think that's relevant, very relevant, because he defended himself like he was panicking when I took that up. And because as a close friend of mine once said, once a soldier, always a soldier.
Yes, indeed.
Now, you know, good at following orders and all that. But the situation came about where I then saw this internal email. The first time I set eyes on it was coming out of a central email system that Carol Bragg's operating through the UK column. An internal email from We Are Change. Now, this sent alarm bells ringing massively in my head because I'm thinking, hang on a minute, because number one, at the time I was being threatened with contempt of court proceedings, which I've subsequently, you know, trumped legally and lawfully for anyone who's listening, and that was all forgotten about. But shortly afterwards, but at the time I'm thinking, if I'd have written something on an internal email and it had been sent round to any outside groups, and I was there talking about something to do with the court, that would have sealed my fate to go in prison. So already on one level I was angry, and then on another level I'm thinking, hang on a minute, why is this email coming out of the UK column office? And hang on a minute, when I had it up, why has there been so many emails being passed around from far right groups coming in and out of the UK column office? And I kept every single email as well, and stuff, and there is a pattern. And whether they've been trying to tap into those people on the fringes of those groups, who knows? There could be a million reasons. But on another level, I have to look at this. My children are mixed race, and no matter how good the British National Party might purport to be, there are ignorant people within it. Very ignorant people.
Can I say something about that, Chris? And it's very, very relevant with the British National Party. Why? As a South African, being I'm blonde, I'm white, I'm as white as you get, really. And theoretically should be on the racist side, being white South African, which I'm not. let me just say the thing that annoys me about the British National Party and why it's so hypocritical is because at one stage the British went and colonized half the bloody world, okay, and put themselves in other countries. They have this tiny little island that they live on, okay, go put themselves in all other countries, cause endless havoc, okay, and I'm a descendant of the Boers. It's through Lord Kitchener, this woman Sheila Butler's uncle, great-uncle, who actually put my ancestors, my great-great-grandmother died in a concentration camp that he set up, okay? My great-grandmother was born in one of those concentration camps, okay? In the Boer War, where the British were fighting just the farmers on the land because the British wanted the land because of the gold. So that's what the Boer Wars were all about. So I have a huge issue with the British National Party now saying, you know, you can't have blacks and Hispanics and yellow and pink people in Britain, but they went and Britain took over half the world once upon a time. You know, so forget the racist issue. It's just so hypocritical. And on those bases, the party's a joke. Never mind the fact that, you know, it's thoroughly just not right to judge anybody based on race or color. You know, this world is now getting smaller and smaller every day, particularly with things like the internet. And we're all embraced as equals, even though we're all different.
Yeah, yeah. This is it, because, you know, there are too many levels of division already in society. And it's like, these parties that are on typically what's known as right wing in the UK, they're just creating more division. Yeah. They're just creating more problems. And this is why the only thing that will ever work, really, is either we take control of the current system as it is, or we all become anarchists, we all become self-governing. You know, they're the only things that are going to work, because, you know, the way that these far-right groups would have it is the current governing system's not working, and this is what British Constitution Group are saying as well. Current system's not working, we need an alternative way. Well, the alternative way could be far worse. We could all end up being chipped and all the white babies in one ward on a thing, and all the brown babies in another ward, and that's not right. You know what? Why does everything have to be controlled? You know, why? Yeah. You know, and this is why. Getting back to Brian Gerrish, I must really sort of implore him to think to himself and think what he's doing, why he's doing it, and what he hopes to achieve, and does it fit within any of the parameters that he's set out with? Yeah. Because one of the things that I have observed, particularly when he's been talking with Robert Greene recently, is when they've been talking about this Down syndrome child, and the emotions are running high, as can be when you're listening to these things, and it's all stuff that's really traumatizing, you know, for some people, having never heard of it even. You know, for them to slip in and start talking about things called child pornography, I despise that. I say, and I plead with them to stop saying such things, because the mainstream media of late has been printing, no doubt all over the world, but certainly in the United Kingdom, about child pornography. And to me, there's no such thing as child pornography. You know, the only things in terms of photographs of children that exist is images of abuse. You know, if it's pornography, then there's a twisted, warped mind that's holding it. You know, that's all I can say, because the definition of pornography and children does not go together in my mind whatsoever. And for them to be mentioning this casually and slipping it in there, I have asked myself a question for a long time: are they doing it on purpose? And with recent events, I have to say that there is a purpose to it, and they're definitely doing it on purpose. But whether they're doing it mindfully or whether they're doing it controlled, I'm not sure, because I do see that Brian is wearing an earpiece on his broadcasts. Who is telling him? Who's speaking in his ear? I do wonder. And, you know, that again shows, you know, that there's something else going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing. We've never had any transparency. They've never showed us around the studio, have they? Let's face it. As most BBC broadcasts do behind the scenes of making of whatever, you know, and it's all a bit of a mystery. And we've never seen the printing press of the UK column. You know, they could do all sorts of things, but they always seem to be pointing the finger in the other direction. It's very interesting, that. You know.
Absolutely. Chris, is there anything more you want to share with us before we finish off this interview?
I'm sure as soon as we finish, I'll think of a million things. You know, who knows, I might come back to you another time with some more interesting things, but that's about it for now on my mind. And really, if I could just reiterate to people listening that the things that I've come out with today are in your interests, because one day you might be in a position where you might need some help, and you might go there to the UK column, to Brian Gerrish, and get railroaded. You know, that's what we're trying to avoid, folks. We want progress. We want people to have justice. You know, people shouldn't be facing the tyranny of secret courts and things, and certainly shouldn't be getting railroaded when they're seeking help. And as I say, you know, I send Brian love, and I do wish him all the best, and I hope in the next few days, I hope that we speak on the phone, and I hope he would see the error of his ways. That's all I hope for.
Absolutely. And that's very good of you, Chris. And of course, we at Freedom Central also just want the very best for all parties involved, and just complete honesty, truth and transparency with regards to everything. I would just like to say, however, Chris, since we did mention it in the interview, I will mention it now before you go, and that is that I will absolutely not be submitting any details of my abuse to anybody. It was a passing comment that was made. At no point am I out to make allegations against anybody or prove anything. It has been dealt with in my past, and to be honest with you, it's not relevant to any issues at hand, and I just don't think it's of Brian Gerrish's place to be using this as a battle tool or a psychological tactic against me. In fact, I think it's quite poor. And, you know, as much as you wish him well, unfortunately, there are just certain levels to which you sink in my book that I can't think any good of you. And that is unfortunately that level. Yeah,
I just will follow up that as well by saying that I have to agree with you on what you've said there, because I just ask the listeners once again just to remember that Brian hasn't answered any of the questions that he's been asked. Just remember that, folks.
Okay, lovely. Thanks for that, Chris. All right, Chris, lovely to have you with us. And as always, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
All right, cheers. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.